welcome to Budget Outlaws. Yes, it was way out of whack, but as you can see, it's back. Today we're going to talk about the suspension. This is my 1974 Porsche 914 that was hit hard in the right front and then spun around and hit on the left front. At this point you can see I have the unibody back together, and see the links below if you want to see the earlier videos. This video will be on suspension repair. I was a front end and brake mechanic for many years in a past life. This is a highly modified 914 with 911 turbo suspension and brakes front and rear. The lower ball joints are Elephant Racing offset ball joints that create additional negative camber. Also, the lower control arm rubber bushings were replaced with Elephant Racing bronze poly bushings. The front torsion bars are 22mm aftermarket 911 units. The rears are 250-pound coilovers with Bilsteins all the way around. The rear control arms are 914 box units. It doesn't have a rear sway bar, but it does have a Tangerine Racing front sway bar kit. Chris at Tangerine Racing did most of the recent changes to this setup, and I won't be messing with it until I get some serious seat time with it as it is. The visible damage included the driver's front control arm, that was ready to fall off. The driver's side outer tie rod end was bent. The passenger lower ball joint had the dust cover popped out. And that's all I could see. So I set about ordering a new lower control arm and tie rod end. I made a dust cover for the ball joint, knowing that it was the offset ball joint and I didn't really want to buy a new one. But what I didn't know is that it popped off because a clip inside it broke and was pushing the stud down onto the bottom. So more on this later. I changed out the components for the lower control arm, and I could reuse the lower offset ball joint on the driver's side. I ordered an additional inside bearing races for the control arm as they would be damaged by heating the glue to remove them. Still, it saved me a good amount just not having to buy a whole kit. So I had all this ready when I was finally finished with the unibody. Now I'm using the 2003 hollow spoke Porsche wheels for now, the ones that came with it, but they have approximately 2-inch wheel spacers, more or less depending on which tires I'm using. And I have a second set of those wheels minus the hollow spokes. I'm really looking for something either in a 17 or 18 by 10 inch deep dish so I can get rid of the wheel spacers, put less load on the wheel bearings. And it doesn't hurt to save a couple pounds on each corner. Getting back to the suspension, I was working a deadline of late March to have it back to racing condition so that I could be ready for the first race of the season with the Siskiyou Sports Car Club. It was a spring enduro, so I needed to have it right because it was a one-and-done race. If you remember from my welding video, I put the suspension on it and did an initial alignment and corner balance to see if I had totally screwed it up, and then removed it to finish the welding. Now I was ready to do the final install of the suspension. Of course, I had to throw the Sheridan fiberglass fender and bumper piece on to see what it looked like. The install went fine as expected, so I spent a couple of weeks assembling the rest of the car. The fuel system, the cooling system, lights, brakes, mounting the fiberglass panels using the dust fasteners, and so on. I'll cover some of that in a separate video. I came across a few items that needed more attention than others, such as that pesky passenger side lower ball joint. The cover popped off again. So I pulled it off and discovered the clip inside was broken. That side didn't have a problem gaining enough negative camber, so I replaced it with a stock ball joint. Now I could do a proper alignment. We'll need to do another video on alignment. There's just too much to talk about there. So I did an initial ride height adjustment and then my home string theory laser alignment. I think that has a good ring to it. Finally, I was ready to drive the 914 LS6, but it wasn't registered. So I hauled it down to DMV on a trailer because it was easier than making a trip, waiting around for a one-day pass, then going home, coming back the next day, waiting around and getting the VIN verified. Nonetheless, I was a bit scared about how the 914 race car would be received by the DMV person doing the inspection. Well, she barely looked at it. I showed her where 2 VINs were located, and she was happy. I had my registered Porsche 914 LS6. I went home, unloaded it off the trailer, and immediately went for a drive on the open road. And hey, you know what? It did just fine. There was some confusion in my own mind on what was tire spin and what the reality of clutch slip. But hey, I was getting accustomed to my new toy. The main thing is that it drove straight, took the bumps well, a bit stiff, but expected, and it seemed to stop okay. And when it wasn't slipping, it was going like a bat out of hell. So I made the final updates, finished in time for the spring enduro. I felt quite accomplished. I took a total monster hot rod, completely disassembled it, cut off some pieces, welded on some new ones, and somehow made it run and drive straight again. So back on the suspension. I found some 40mm lowering spindles and struts on 914 World. So I installed them thinking it would help me gain some additional negative camber. But it was too extreme. So I removed them and took my old ones and did a partial lowering of 20mm. This allowed me to keep the suspension geometry close to stock and still lower the car where it needed to be, at least in my mind. Another corner balance and alignment, and I was ready for the next Autocross. I don't know if it made any difference. I and the car still have a long ways to go. I was still far from my competition, but having a great time. Hey, I came within a couple points of winning my class last year. If I can't win by speed and skill, I'll take them down with perfect attendance. Well, I've yet to get it on the big track where it will really shine. Likely Thunder Hill Raceway. Hopefully this year. That should be amazing. Well, we have several new videos in the wing. One from Andrew on his 914 Turbo Audi build, and I'm really close to starting that barn find Porsche 944 that's been parked for 20 years. And of course I'll have an instructional on doing home alignments. The new SSCC season is almost upon us. Time to get cracking on that 914 Outlaw. Hey, hit the subscribe button and the bell to be notified when we come out with new videos. Thanks for watching. Bye.